Hello everyone, welcome to the most embarrassing video that I am super incredibly nervous to share with you today. My name is Stacey Flowers and I am your host for this whole entire channel, and I'm super honored and happy that you are here supporting me. Today we are going to talk about how I fell back into debt, what types of debt I have, and a little bit of my money story because I think it's going to be important because, spoiler alert, even though I've fallen back into debt, I wholeheartedly still believe that I can climb this mountain. I can conquer this particular thing in my life and become completely debt free. So let's get started with let's get started with how much debt do I have. Okay, so you guys saw that number. So if you've been following me for a while, you know that that is actually more debt than I originally started with 3 years ago when I first went on this debt journey. And I believe when I first started, I thought the amount was like 152K. Then I did some more calculations and realized it was really 160 some K. And then towards the middle of that process, and this is where we're going to talk about how I fell back into debt. So then towards the middle of that process, I'm dumping debt. I'm doing a good job. So it's 163K. Then I go get a car that's like 10 grand, so that's 10 grand on there. And then I think the thing that like really turned things topsy-turvy is, one, I upgraded my home, and two, I started living off of my earning potential, and three, my family went through a crisis again, and I wound up being the person who was providing for them, like shelter and stuff. So let's kind of like break that down a little bit. So I have this sort of 160 some odd $1,000. I'm being aggressive. I pay off a significant amount. I don't pay it all off, and I get very, very close to being under $100,000. And I was feeling good. And I did that over in a 2.5, 3 year period. And I'm feeling freaking amazing. And one of the things that was great about that is the first year when I was doing it, I had no plan or no strategy, which made it very difficult. The second year I had a plan and strategy. I highly recommend Dave Ramsey's Financial Peace University, which is also the program I'm going to be using to do this the second time. Because as soon as I had a strategy, like I knew how to do this debt dumping thing. Now the trouble with that is, you know, money in general is like, I can't remember what Dave Ramsey says, but it's like 90% behavior, 10% attitude or psychology or something like that. What I did not know is that when my emotions are running crazy, that they have the power to usurp that 90% that is just behavior, and that my mind, and in general people's mind, will go to great lengths to convince us to do anything in any way. And so I had paid off such a significant amount of money that I was really feeling myself. I was like, oh, I can do this. And so as soon as I really felt like I could do it, like a crap ton of money is coming in, I'm like, oh, I can do this. This is no longer hard. And it was almost like, because it was no longer hard, I kind of eased up a little bit on the reins of it all. And so that was happening. It was still hard, but it just wasn't as hard as when I first started doing it. I had a plan. I could project. I could say that I was doing something, and even if I fell off, get back up relatively easy. And I think that that was actually tricking me into believing that I was actually doing something on some months when most months I wasn't. So that was a little bit of it. It was just that the success of paying off so much gave me this boost thought that I could literally do anything, and my diligence and commitment didn't need to be so fierce. So that's one thing. The second thing is my career really begun to take off, and because it was taking off, like I have all this money coming in, so it's like I know where this money should go, but do I really need to spend all this money over here? So then I decided to upgrade my home, and me upgrading my home was an emotional decision. Behind the scenes, there were other things that were going on, but it was an emotional decision that I could afford to do. So that's the other thing. In my mind, I'm struggling between, like, you have the income coming in that means you can pay this rent. Technically, you can afford this. The way culture says you can afford this. Truthfully, I couldn't afford it, because if you're still 100K plus in debt, you can't afford it, right? But again, your mind will convince you of anything to get what it wants. And so I upgrade my home, and I upgrade my home to a 4-bedroom, 1.5, 3-story downtown duplex, and I'm loving it. And so like there's a portion of what would have been paid on debt that I begin to use to decorate. But then my family goes through a crisis, and literally every single person in my immediate family, from my mom to dad to siblings to nieces, moves into my home, and that creates a financial strain. And so just trying to keep up with all of that, but also keep up with the momentum of the successes that I'm really experiencing in my life. Like, you know, I'm being flown to countries and continents, and I want to dress accordingly. Like, I want to look good. But the stress at home is like, okay, then I'm upgrading my self-care. You know, I'm getting my nails done. I'm getting massages. I'm doing all these things that before, when I was being very aggressive, I wasn't doing. And I'm thinking, oh, it's just $20. It's just $40. It's just, you know, I'm not realizing that adds up when you do it 2 to 3 times a week. Like, that adds up when the stress at home is so great that you are really indulging in other self-care habits that come with expenses, because there's a way for you to do self-care that doesn't have the measure of expense that I was creating. You know, I was gifted an office space, and that's wonderful, and that should have come without expense, but then I wanted to decorate my office space. And so, you know, there's so much money going out because I believe that this money is just going to keep coming in. And also, I launched the Happy Conference, and putting on a 3-day conference costs money. Even right now today, like, I still have invoices, and there's so much shame, and I'm processing it, but I still have invoices that I need to pay for this Happy Conference. And I'm so disappointed that, like, I even leveraged myself to produce something, because it's not who I am, it's not who I want to be. And so I would say that just the combination of all those experiences, and here's the thing, that's just life. In no way am I saying, oh, I'm special, poor me. No, that's just life. Dave Ramsey talks about how in a 10-year period, you are bound, somebody's going to die, a crisis is going to happen, you're going to start a business, something is bound to happen. And the idea of following the baby steps is so that when life shows up, you are actually in a financial position to face it. And unfortunately, I didn't pass that test the first time it came around. And so the combination of all these circumstances, I would definitely say, impacted how I got back into debt, or how I fell back into debt. But the truth of the matter is I fell back into debt because I begun to use debt again. And that's how I fell back in. Like, my behavior begun to be the behavior of someone who said that debt is okay. My behavior begun to be the behavior of someone who said that this is a tool, this is leverage, it's okay. Like, I made the decision, consciously, unconsciously, it doesn't matter. I did it. And I'm saying that because I want you to see that I'm accepting full responsibility. It's no one's fault. It's not the man, it's not the system. I did it. I fell back into debt because I stopped choosing to get out of debt. I fell back into debt because I went back on my commitment to myself to get out of debt. I fell back into debt because I fell into the cultural trap that says this is okay and you've done a good job. Like, you're almost at 100K, girl, you deserve it. You need to treat yourself. Like, I fell back into debt because I bought into some very serious myths about money, and I knew better, and so I should have done better. And that's what this is about, because I'm going to do better. So let's talk about so that's how it happened. I broke my commitment to myself, and I think anytime in our lives when we break our commitment to ourselves, there's going to be this shame, there's going to be this shock, there's going to be this thing that I'm experiencing right now. The other thing that I want to point out too is the going back into more debt. That often happens, and a part of the reason why I was able to go back into more debt is because my income soared so high. But also, I realized that my debt threshold, the place at which I'm comfortable, I am comfortable carrying 150K. I don't break a sweat, and I should, but I don't break a sweat. But I don't break a sweat because of the thoughts that I had around consuming that amount of debt, and because I'm not experiencing the pressures of having that debt, which is a problem. Like, I should feel the weight of 150K, but I don't. And so my debt threshold is actually 150K. These couple $1,000s that are over the 150K, that's what's really making me uncomfortable. But if I had just went back in and I capped at 150, I probably wouldn't even be doing this video. But my threshold is 150 and I'm somewhere way above it. And so now I'm like, okay, girl, you got to pull it together, which is a problem. I'm not saying that to glorify it. I'm saying it to say you have a debt threshold, and your debt threshold, you know what it is, because no matter how much you pay off, within a month, within a week, within a quarter, you are right back to that number. And you're like, man, I just paid this off. And you see it happen when like you pay off your car, but then you're like, well, my car is paid off, I don't have a car. No, you know what, I should upgrade my car. Oh my God. We all have a debt threshold. I just know that mine is right around 150K, and I'm gonna solve that. I'm gonna fix that. So let's talk about the types of debt that I have. I wrote this down. Let's talk about the types of debt. So I have collections, right? So top of the year, I told you that I got very, very sick. And so that meant that I broke my lease unexpectedly. That meant that I didn't pay off these utility bills. And my utility bill went from like $75 a month to like $800 a month, because I have 6 adults, 8 children living in one home. So it was like $75 a month to $800 a month. So I have my utility bills are in collections. I have my broken lease amount that's in collection, and just various things like that that are in collection. My car that I had bought a couple of years ago, I have not made a payment on that car in a while. And you know, I do believe that it is through me tithing and me being diligent in the few years that I was. That's probably why they've extended me so much grace. I mean, I've made a couple sporadic payments, but maybe out of this year, and we are, you know, almost in October, I think I've made 3 or 4 car payments. And I think they've extended me so much grace because I had such good payment history before. Bank is small, yada yada yada. I don't want to make assumptions, but that's not in collections, but that's definitely a debt. I have business debt, right? I was launching a premium 3-day conference, and while there was great amount of money coming in because of the ticket sales, it was certainly not enough to cover the costs. And so I have business debt from that experience, from doing the conference, upgrading my office, and just other business expenses that I incurred through traveling. I have personal debts where people have been very, very kind and generous to me in both this season that I'm resting in now, and just the season when I was building. And some of them, I know that they were loans, like personal loans. Some of them I know that they're giving out of the kindness of their heart, but I adding up that total, there are those personal loans, favors that are out there. Then I have like my regular student loans. There's still student loans debt, back taxes, because all last year, even though I was supposed to be paying my quarterlies, I didn't do it. And I really wish I could say, oh, I didn't do it because I was stressed about my family. I didn't do it because the business. I didn't do it because I didn't do it, and it's my responsibility to do that. The other thing is I do have a little bit of a PayPal credit. I wouldn't say that I'm mentioning that as opposed to like my collections, my business debt, personal loans, and taxes, because it feels like the PayPal credit is a little bit more like a credit card. So if I were to say, do you have a credit card? Like, I feel like the PayPal credit is like a credit card. And then last but certainly not least, I still have my car. And so I had made mention, I believe I made 3 or 4 payments. It's a little fuzzy simply because like that's just how sick I was, that like I was not fully aware of everything that I was doing month to month to month. And so not making those payments, I'm incurring interest, late fees, and also the cost of the payment that is missed. So my car is still on there. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 different types of debt. The last thing that I want to kind of just like connect the dots and share is that like I am 150 million% committed to getting out of debt. And what I've learned in the last 3 years is something that I want to apply to this particular journey. And so there were mistakes that I made, like thinking that I was going to pay off, you know, 160K in a year was just unrealistic, and it was a lot of pressure, and it caused me to make a lot of mistakes that I wouldn't have otherwise made. So this particular amount of debt, I'm actually giving myself 4 years to pay this off, and I chose 4 years for a number of reasons. You know what, this video is getting long, so let's actually talk about that in another video, like what I plan to do differently based on the lessons that I've learned in the last 3 years. I think the thing that's most important for you guys to know is that I'm still committed to this process. There was a quote going around, and it was just like, it took me blank years to get into debt, and it's going to take me this many years to get out. And one of the things that I have to really consider is that ultimately the bulk of my debt is student loans, and it took me about 9 years to create that debt. And then all of the smaller debts that I've created in time, I've been getting into debt for, you know, since I was 20 years old, and you know, I'm in my early 30s now. So it took me several years to get into debt, and so I want to honor the idea that it may take me several years to get out of debt. So that's just something that I just wanted to make a statement of. Like, I still believe that debt is a trap, not a tool. There was so much shame around this experience, and you know, thank God for therapy, right? Like, we didn't directly talk about these things in therapy. We don't actually talk about my finances at all in therapy, but through healing some of my old emotional wounds, it makes it easier for me to talk about this and to deal with the shame that's involved with all of that. And I happen to believe that although money cannot buy happiness, neither can debt. And if you are under the myth, illusion, and lie that debt is going to be able to buy you your happiness, whether it's a house, a wedding, a car, or whatever, you are going to be sorely mistaken when it finally is time for you to pay back all of those things that you owe. So do what you have to do to position yourself to be able to actually create real happiness. Okay? I love you so much. I appreciate you for watching and always supporting me. If you have not already, like this video if you certainly want to see more videos like this, and subscribe so that you can get your videos from me. I will talk to you guys soon. Bye.